Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to learn about debounceTime operator. It's a rate limiting operator, which means that it will help us to control or limit the values emitted by the source observable. It is useful for scenarios where the observable emits values quite frequently, and we want to avoid such rapid processing of the values. That may also include calling an API. Using debounceTime, we ensure that the processing of these values happen after a certain period of inactivity. Let's try to understand it via visual presentation before jumping to code. Let's say you have an observable to which you have applied debounceTime, passing 500 to it as the argument, and then is your observer. The value of 500 here represents the wait time in milliseconds. By passing 500, we'll tell this operator that pass the latest value emitted by the observable only after 500 milliseconds of inactivity. As we go along, we'll understand it better. Now let's consider that our observable emits the value 1. Once this value is emitted, debounceTime will store this value and then start a timer of 500 milliseconds. Okay, now let's say within this duration, probably after 200 milliseconds, another value was emitted by the observable. In such a case, the debounceTime operator will discard the previous value, which was 1, store the latest received one, that is 2 in this case, and then reset the timer. So the operator will now wait for 500 milliseconds of inactivity before passing this value to the observer. Now let's say 500 milliseconds has been passed. Okay. And there were no new values emitted by the observable. Thus the operator will pass the latest value, which is 2 in this case, to the observer. Since within the specified time of 500 milliseconds, there were no new values emitted by the observable, the debounceTime will pass the latest value. Now, as soon as another value is emitted, right, let's say your observable emits the value 3. At this point, the operator, the debounceTime operator, will start the process again. It will start the timer of 500 milliseconds. Right? And let's say another value 4 was emitted immediately after it. So 500 milliseconds has not been passed yet. In that case, the value 3 will be discarded. The latest value will be stored, that is 4, and the timer will reset. Right? And if for 500 milliseconds, no values were received, then the debounceTime operator will pass the latest value to your observer. I hope you got a good understanding of how debounceTime operator works. And one of the most common use case of it is the search input box or the autocomplete. You don't want to trigger an API for every keystroke, right? User keeps on typing, let's say, a country name, right? India, IND for each of these characters. You don't want to emit or call the API, right? Rather, you want the user to stop typing for a specified duration. Let's say if user doesn't type for around 200 milliseconds, then only I will initiate the API request or I'll process those values. DebounceTime is useful in such scenarios. Let's head to the VS Code and code a few examples. We have a basic index.html file and we're using RxJS version 7. I've created an empty JavaScript file called as debounceTime operator, and the same is referred in here. Currently, it doesn't have anything in here, and that's why if you head to the browser and do a refresh, you'll see nothing in the console. Now let's start by writing the first example. Now we'll use the example provided in the RxJS doc. A user can click anywhere in this entire document. And our objective is to know the latest click event. So we want to know the X and Y position of where the click event occurred. And we want to know the latest position of it. Why latest? The reason is that, let's say the processing of the data involved making an API call. I don't want to make an API call for each of these click event. Okay. And that's the reason I only need the latest value. So let's say user rapidly clicks in the entire document, right? But holds for 1 second, and within this 1 second there is no click event, then send me the latest click event with the information of the coordinates. Let's code it out to understand it better. We'll start by importing the operators. To capture the click event, we'll use from event. Let me just increase the size better. I'll close this as well. Great. So from RxJS, we will include from event. Okay. Let's create our observable. From event, we'll pass document because that's our target. What type of event we want to listen for is the click event. Let's create our observer. We'll receive the next notification. We'll just log it. Right. Finally, the subscription mechanism. Source dot subscribe will pass the observer. Right. Hit save. Now, if you click in here, you can see the next notification. Now it has a number of keys, but we only need the X and Y coordinate, which will be, let's go for offset X and Y. Which operator do you think is best suited for this to get or extract the keys from this event? Map operator. Start by importing the map operator, and then we'll use pipe method. Map will receive the event, return the X position. We'll name it as, let's say, copy it from here, offset X, this event dot this, and then the offset Y, event dot Y. Hit save. You can see we just use the map operator because we were not interested in the entire event object, rather only interested in offset X and offset Y. And here, if I now click, you can see we get the X and Y coordinates. Great. Now, if I click rapidly, you can see the notification getting triggered, right? But we want that if the user holds for 1 second, then only send me that event, right? For that, what we will use is debounceTime. Let's import it. Again, we are using RxJS version 7. So the operators can be directly imported from the upper level. If you're using, I'm not exactly sure, RxJS version 5 or so, you may need RxJS.operators to import these operators. But since we're using version 7, we can directly import it. So before map operator, we'll use debounceTime. And why before map operator? Because we don't want this data, right? We don't want the data to be processed at all unless it satisfies the condition that there was a pause of or inactivity of 1 second. Then only we need the latest value. Let's use debounceTime. It accepts time in millisecond. We'll pass 1000. And a comma to it. Great. Now hit save. What I will do here is I'll rapidly click in here, and then from here, go here, and then pause for 1 second. Which value do you think we should receive? So let's try that. I'll click in here, then go here. As you can see, we receive the value of this particular position, right? Because if you click here, you can see the offset X is around 59. To tell you that I'm actually clicking in there, let us use tab operator. And it will just say that clicked. Console.log clicked. Right? So anytime you do a click event, this will be logged, right? But since we are using debounceTime of 1 second, then only further processing of the data will happen. But this click you will see every time or each time you do a click event. Hit save. Okay, I forgot importing the tab operator. Import the same. Let's click here. You can see we are receiving the click event, right? But I'll go here and click. You can see I only received the extreme left X and Y position. Let's try one more example of search input box. Okay. We'll head to index.html and in here, let's add the input box. So this is how it looks. We'll just have the input element, type text. We have added an ID to it. Ignore the classes. This is just for styling because of Tailwind CSS. And then we have a placeholder. Hit save. You can see we got the text box in here. Now we'll come back to our JavaScript file. And for now, let's comment this so that we do not get the click event. First, we'll start by reading the values. So whenever a user types any country name, let's say India, we want to read the value. We're going to use this same from event, and instead of click, what kind of event we are looking for is the key up. So let's start by creating our observable. Const, let's say source, or let's say search input, use from event, pass the element. Now before we pass the element, let's collect it in a variable. Const search input element equals to document dot get element by ID, and the ID that we passed to it was input hyphen box. Just copy it and paste it in here. Okay, we'll pass the same as the first argument, search input element, and the event that we are looking for is here. Okay, we have our observable. Next is the observer. I'll just copy the same. Okay. Finally is the subscription mechanism. We have the observable, search input dot subscribe, passing the observer. Hit save. Damn it, something search input element is not defined. Okay, in here. Hit save. Great. Now if I type here, we are getting the entire event. Just like in our previous example, we are only interested in the value, not the entire event object. So we'll use map dot pipe, pass the map operator, we'll get the event, and we are only interested with the value. So event dot target dot value. Hit save now. Now if you see, if I type India now, for each of the keystroke, our observer is receiving the value. So if I now, I'm just changing this calling as calling API. If I type in here, India, now you can see how inefficient it is, right? For each of the keystroke, we are making an API call. So there will be a number of API calls, which is not ideal. And to save us, we'll use debounceTime. Let's add it in here. We'll use debounceTime. Pass it, let's say 500 milliseconds. So if the user is continuously typing, I don't need the value. Once the user stops for 500 milliseconds, there is no keystroke, send me that value. Hit save. Here, if you can see, if I repeatedly type, right, there will be no next notification. And if I pause for 500 milliseconds or so, then only the next notification will be triggered. You can see this time it didn't invoke the next notification of the observer for each of the keystrokes. I hope you got a clear understanding of what is debounceTime and how to use it. It can be confusing at first. I often got confused comparing it with throttle time. It took me a while to understand the differentiation between both of them. So debounceTime, it will not emit the value immediately. It will wait for a certain period of time based on whatever values you have provided to it, right? If within the specified time there is no new value emitted by the observable, then only debounceTime will go and process the value further. So that's it. That's all about debounceTime. Meet you in the next lesson. Until then, happy coding.